Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Solomon now that David is dying and then dies in this chapter of First Kings. As David is dying, he says to Solomon, "Moreover, you know also what Joab, the son of Zeruiah, did to me, and what he did to the two commanders of the armies of Israel, to Abner, the son of Ner, and Amasa, the son of Jether, whom he killed. And he shed the blood of war in peacetime, and put the blood of war on his belt that was around his waist, and his sandals that were on his feet. Therefore do according to your wisdom, and do not let his gray hair go down to the grave in peace." Now, here's David, who hasn't had the wherewithal, the strength of character, the willingness to do the right thing concerning Joab all these years, because Joab has been a really bad influence in the midst of the king's court in Jerusalem, and Joab has caused nothing but trouble, even prior to David becoming king. And yet, the only thing David does is tell his son as he's dying on his deathbed, make him pay. And then he says the same thing about Shimei. Shimei was the one who first cursed David when David was fleeing Jerusalem, when Absalom was trying to take over, and then kissed up to him and tried to make things better when David returned. And David promised him, remember this was from a few weeks back. David, in order to make peace in the kingdom, apparently, promised Shimei, "I won't do a thing to you. I forgive you for throwing rocks at me and talking trash to me as I was leaving in disgrace. And now that I'm back, you're trying to make up for it. I forgive you." But then he says to Solomon, "And see, you have with you Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjaminite from Bahurim, who cursed me with a malicious curse in the day when I went to Mahanaim. But he came down to meet me at the Jordan when I returned. And I swore to him by the Lord, saying, I will not put you to death with the sword. Now therefore do not hold him guiltless, for you are a wise man and know what you ought to do to him. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. But bring his gray hair down to the grave with blood." Well, then he spells it out. I'm not going to tell you what to do. Well, I will. But you're wise, Solomon. I promised to leave him alone, but when I'm dead, you can do whatever you want to him. And in fact, you should kill him. Now, Solomon actually, although he makes sure that Joab is killed, as he's holding onto the horns of the altar for mercy, nevertheless, Solomon has Joab killed. And Solomon, however, offers Shimei a deal. Stay in Jerusalem and don't leave. But if I suspect that you're doing anything outside of Jerusalem, perhaps with the implication that Shimei might be involved in stirring up sedition against Solomon's dynasty, Solomon's reign, he says, stay here, you'll be fine. Shimei promises to, because Shimei is more than happy. Shimei never speaks truth to power. Shimei is very careful about who's got power and who doesn't, and whoever does, he plays up to them. So Shimei agrees and then either forgets, or one of the commentaries I read, he didn't literally cross the brook that Solomon told him not to cross, but he did leave Jerusalem. At any event, that's it, Shimei. Now let's look at that very last line in this chapter, which is here. Thus the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon. Now, from the point of view of mercy, Solomon is, I got to get this. Hang on. Okay, so anyway, he's consolidating power. From a political point of view, Solomon is doing what all new power does. All new kings, even presidents. I mean, presidents don't kill people, but they get rid of the old cabinet from the old administration. They get rid of all the political appointments from the old administration because they don't want people loyal to the previous guy. Well, in this case, Solomon doesn't have to worry about the previous guy because the previous guy was his father, but he's doing, although too violently, what David should have done. Now, Shimei is another question, but still, I mean, you can see the way they're thinking. They're being a little too literal in the fact that, yeah, David promised Shimei that he, David, wouldn't do anything to him, but David on his deathbed says to Solomon, you kill that dude. Now, again, you guys could be shocked and you could say, oh, these are heroes of the Bible, but they're sinners. And this is the ancient world where this stuff was more out in the open. We're exactly the same these days. I mean, Putin in Russia, but at least when I'm recording this, everybody's up in arms. They don't know if there's going to be a war. Will Putin invade the Ukraine? By the time you watch this, who knows what's going to have happened? But he gets people killed. Putin poisons people. He poisons his enemies and kills them. You think we've changed? We haven't changed. Maybe we're a little more, quote unquote, civilized in the US of A, in that, we don't have people killing one another when it comes to politics, but they try to totally destroy and ruin one another. They try to destroy their reputations and so forth. Power is what people are hungry for. But the power in and of itself isn't bad, and it's a mixture of things. Again, Solomon is not wrong to try to establish his reign by eliminating the bad eggs. If Solomon had been indulgent as David was and allowed Joab to continue, and maybe even Shimei and some of these others, he would have put himself at risk. Whether or not he needs to kill Joab as Joab is grabbing the horns of the altar in the Holy of Holies asking for mercy, well, that's another question. Maybe power is too big of a deal for Solomon. And we know, as we will read, and if you come back next semester in the fall, Solomon is a character of, he's good and bad, like all of us. And he's very good in some ways and very bad in others. So at any rate, this is what we're seeing. This is power politics. And if you study secular history, even church history, you see this kind of stuff. You see these kind of intrigues. This is how people operate when they're interested in power. And as I say, there's a certain rationalization for that, because when you're ruling, you need to lay down the law. Hopefully you can do it without physically killing other people. But if this were simply a question of a new administration in a democratic government, the first thing you do is you get rid of people like Joab and Shimei. Out. And you do whatever you can to make sure they don't get followers. Hopefully that doesn't involve violence, but it does involve a kind of leadership. So what I'm saying here is there's two things going on. Solomon is acting as a leader, should in some ways, and in other ways, he's showing that he's more interested in power perhaps than he ought to be, certainly more interested than mercy. And as Solomon's career develops, we'll learn more about him. But that's not going to be this semester. That comes in the future if you guys return. Tomorrow is our last set of readings for the semester. See you then.